snitched on the other dudes that was in his case. So he violated that, and now the feds went and popped him up. So today he pulls up in the courthouse with his lawyer, and the judge says, look, man, I'm going to tell you guys exactly what happened. I'm going to read it verbatim so y'all can hear what happened in court just now, because I was watching it. So the judge says, all rise. So the judge, who's Judge Engelmeyer, says, we're here on a violation of supervised release. Defendant was supposed to appear today at 9:30 a.m. and did not. So he was arrested at 10:30 a.m. I need to arraign him on 3 violations. Mr. Lazaro, have you read them? Now, Lazaro, you guys, is Tekashi 6ix9ine's lawyer. That's his lawyer. You understand what I'm saying? That's his lawyer. Is Lazaro. That's his lawyer, right? Now, let's keep going, right? His lawyer said yes. The judge says, Mr. Lazaro, he says, turn off your phone. Is it off? Mr. Smallman, swear to defendant. Done. The judge says, is your mind clear? Question mark. Tekashi 6ix9ine says, yes, Your Honor. And then the judge says, have you discussed it with your attorney? Tekashi says, I live in Florida. First time I've seen him. And then the judge says, you are charged with travel to Las Vegas without permission, not turning up for drug testing, using the N-word, M-word, M-E-T word, M-E-T-H. He says, how did you plead? Tekashi 6ix9ine says, not guilty. The judge says, so, he asked the prosecutors, what are the basis of your charges? You know what I'm saying? Now, Rebo, the officer, says Officer Bryce in the Southern District of Florida, right? So the prosecution says on September the 7th, he went to Las Vegas without receiving any permission. They want to amend or supersede with details of this weekend. On Saturday, the defendant went to Sarasota. When confronted, Mr. Hernandez, who's Tekashi 6ix9ine, y'all, denied being there. But there's proof. Then the government says 2 times in the last 2 weeks, he tested positive for M-E-T, you know what? It says, we got a letter from Dr. Rebecca Wang in Florida. Do you have it? Question mark. The judge says no. Then the prosecution says, I'll show it to his lawyer first. The judge says, please do. Then the judge says, now I have them. Then the prosecution says they're backdated to August and September, received today. They're designed to provide the explanation of why he tested positive for this substance, including a ADD word and a DIG word. It says, Judge, are you saying they're not from Dr. Wayne? Is what the judge says. And the prosecution says no. The prosecution says there's skepticism about the dating of the letter, and the defendant was unable to provide prescription bottles. The judge says, so it's through the black market means? Question mark. The government says, or it's just a way to try to explain a positive test. The judge says, I granted him compassionate release in light of his blank sensitivity. When they had the pandemic, said he was sensitive to that. So the judge said he granted him compassionate release. But he's still under supervision. Wasn't he in the Dominican Republic arrested and not able to leave? Does that count towards the running of the supervised release? Question mark. The government says, let me check. The judge says, while in Dominican Republic, he was unable to violate U.S. law. So how does this time there count towards his supervised release? I don't get that. Then the government says, I'm told that as long as he's at liberty, even if he's not in the U.S., it counts towards his supervised release. The judge says, I'm told he paid his financial duty. He has 160 hours of community service left in the next 6 months. There are other significant issues. The judge went on to say that there was physical altercation in the Dominican Republic, domestic violence, and battery, a speeding ticket in Florida for going 198 miles per hour in an unregistered car. That was apparently resolved. He said he's going to Russia on October the 19th, is what this guy said, right? Now, y'all check this out. It gets deeper than this, right? So now it goes on to say, the judge says, So we have to decide when we have an evidentiary hearing and what to do with Tekashi 6ix9ine or Mr. Hernandez until then. The prosecution says we can move quickly. The judge says to Tekashi's lawyer, are we likely looking at a disposition? And Tekashi's lawyer says, I like that. There are factors that weigh in his favor. The judge says, you need to confer with him. He has a liberty interest. What if we reconvene next Thursday at 9 a.m.? What I envision, Mr. Lazaro, is there's not a disposition. We'll have an evidentiary hearing, and the prosecution says November the 8th, and the judge says, I can't. How about November the 12th at 1:30 p.m.? The prosecution said, that's tough too. The judge says, so November the 12th, Tekashi 6ix9ine's lawyer says, how about the 7th? And the government says, no, we prefer November the 12th. And the judge says the 12th then. A letter by noon on the 7th, defense by the 8th. And then the prosecution says, let's orally amend the specification. The judge said in writing is better. The judge says, let's address detention or release before November the 12th. Government, question mark. And then the government says, we believe that detention, which means holding him in jail, is appropriate. He's a risk not to return, compounded by the conduct this weekend, knowing he had a VOSR proceeding, leaving and being dishonest. The prosecution said there's the conduct in the Dominican Republic while ordered to remain there to stand trial. Instead, he left through Haiti and then left Haiti back to the U.S. He boasted about this on his own podcast show. And then the prosecution says that does not bode well for him returning here. The judge says, on the theory that actions speak louder than words, the government said he's also posing a danger to himself with controlled substances. We ask that he be detained. And then it says, the judge says, Mr. Lazaro talking to Tekashi's lawyer. Tekashi's lawyer says, continue him on release. Then Tekashi's lawyer said he went to Las Vegas to perform before 20,000 people to try to survive. The judge says survive. And Tekashi's lawyer says financially, he thought he texted probation. He thought he texted probation. The judge said he was supposed to get permission 2 weeks in advance. 6ix9ine's lawyer then said he has to pay for his own security. He's never accepted the government's offer for security. Dr. Wong, probation required him to attend in 2023. He did not backdate them. They are legit. He was prescribed blank for medical conditions. The judge said seems like a fruitful issue to litigate. 6ix9ine's lawyer says he flew from Florida to Newark last night and stayed in a hotel there. So he was an hour late. That's why they want to detain him. He understands the court gave him a break. Let him out. The judge says he got a break, and deservedly so, as a cooperator, a snitch. Well, he didn't say snitch, but as a cooperator. He said, but there's a pattern, including the conduct in Dominican Republic. It reflects a full spectrum disregard for the law, 6ix9ine's lawyer said. No, it's not international. Oh, no, he said it's not intentional. That's what he said. Then his lawyer says the Dominican Republic is totally corrupt. He was being extorted by the judge. The judge said he's sued by a former girlfriend in Florida. Everything can't be someone else's fault. Tekashi's lawyer says he's different than you or I. Tekashi's lawyer told the judge, y'all, he's different than you and I. He's an entertainer. The judge said he has a duty to turn square corners and not musically riff. 6ix9ine's lawyer says he will return on the 12th. Now, the MDC where Diddy is locked up is where they sending his ass, right? So check this out. Tekashi's lawyer said he'll return on the 12th. The MDC is not a good place to be. Now, mind y'all, that they just did an investigation and a raid on the MDC yesterday because of certain conditions that they said that was going on in that jail that Diddy's in right now, which is the MDC. Tekashi's lawyer is trying to fight to keep him out of the MDC because that's where his ass is going. And he says the MDC is not a good place to be. The judge says his actions are checking him in. I don't have confidence he will show up. The judge says I'm going to detain him until the hearing 2 weeks from now. 6ix9ine's lawyer said my client would like to address you. I don't have a problem with that. The judge says, Mr. Hernandez, talking to Tekashi 6ix9ine, he says anything you say can be held against you. Do you understand? And then Tekashi says yes. And Tekashi says, first, I want to apologize for arriving late this morning. I don't live in NY. I live in Florida. I woke up late. I was released on April the 2nd, 2020. I've been on probation since. The judge says, move away from the microphone. I think you'd understand that. Then Tekashi says, I know my counsel told me not to speak, but the truth stays the same. I've sat with the government many times. You're my judge. I know how strict you are. My goal is not to be in front of you ever. You're a smart person. I can't lie to you. I'm not a piece of, I'm not a bad person. I apologize. I'm coming down to my last 6 months of probation. In the last 6 months, why would I mess up now? My case was transferred to Florida a couple of months ago. The system is different. The system is different, more strict. The thing about September the 7th, the judge says, I advise you not to talk about that. 6ix9ine says, I performed at the T-Mobile Arena. I thought I had permission. I posted it. I didn't get a text back. I'm human. I have that system. I tested positive for reefer. The judge says, you were told to get permission 2 weeks in advance. Tekashi says, my system with the FDNY Manhattan was different. I'm owning up. I performed in front of 20,000 people. I know it's technically wrong, is what Tekashi said, right? And so the judge, ladies and gentlemen, got tired of hearing this dude, right? And locked his ass up, right? So now, Tekashi 6ix9ine has now been locked up with P. Diddy in the MDC detention center, right? And then they said it's a bit more. The judge says, I trust prosecutors will take into the account issues raised by his cooperation. And the prosecutor said, we will. Judge said the court stands ready to assist. We are now adjourned. And so now, Tekashi 6ix9ine is locked up with Diddy. So Tekashi 6ix9ine, who snitched and gave up information on people who was with him, has now been locked up by the feds for violating his probation, violating the terms of his probation. And now Tekashi 6ix9ine, y'all, Tekashi 6ix9ine now may end up going to prison for a long time for violation of his terms of supervised release if he goes to trial and is found guilty on those charges. So somebody said, what is the MDC? The MDC is the Metropolitan Detention Center where he is kept.